My friend Michael was throwing a house party. I arrived early to help set things up. I secured a spot to sleep in his parents' room, meaning I could drive to the party and drink without having to worry about driving home. His parents obviously weren't home for the night. Most of our close friends in our friend group came, plus a bunch of Michael's friends who I didn't know. The party was fun. At midnight, everyone screamed "Happy New Year" and cheered their drinks. After that, people slowly started circulating out, and the party started to quiet down as people went to either other parties, bars, or home. The later the night got, the more it became just the closer friends staying behind, until it just turned into a chill drinking session in the living room. This went on late into the night. It was likely 2:40 a.m. when the last of everyone who wasn't sleeping at Michael's house was gone. As it quieted down, we started hearing this occasional sound. At first, we didn't know what it was, but it soon started to sound like a creaking sound. It was dismissed as a sound from the fridge or something at first, which I know sounds stupid, but house appliances often make weird noises. It was just Michael, me, and Lloyd. Lloyd was falling asleep on the couch already. It was reaching that time where we were just going to go to sleep. However, eventually, we got so bothered by the noise that we had to search. We went to the kitchen, and it wasn't coming from in there. We realized when we were close to the basement door that it was coming from downstairs. Michael opened the door, and we heard this creaking sound. "Go check what it is," I said. He kept saying, "No way." Then he called down into the basement, "Yo, who's down there?" The creaking stopped, and we never heard it again. After a solid minute of waiting at the top of the stairs, we agreed to go down together. We both grabbed knives, drunkenly thinking that was a good idea, when in reality, we were so drunk we'd probably only hurt ourselves with them. We got to the bottom of the stairs and looked through the entire basement. It's not huge, it just has a couch, TV, a bar, a table in the corner, and various old pieces of junk. It was pretty messy at the time. The first thing we did was search any possible crevice for someone who could be hiding. Then we tried to figure out what could have been making that sound. I noticed a rocking chair, and so I went up to it, sat in it, and then started rocking in it. It made the exact same creaking sound we had been hearing. Michael and I looked at each other. I stood up, and so did every hair on my body. I don't think we ever ran faster than we did when we ran up those stairs and slammed the door shut. We tried to come up with any logical explanation, but there was none. He kept the basement door locked for days until his parents came back. There was no living soul down there, but something was moving that rocking chair. That rocking chair used to belong to his grandma, who passed away forever ago, and it's just something his mom held on to for sentimental reasons. I can't say I've ever experienced anything resembling the paranormal before this, nor since then. It still sends chills down my spine. A few years ago, when I was 18, I was coming home from watching the fireworks display on New Year's Eve. It was 3 a.m. when I reached my safe, family-friendly, nothing ever happens neighborhood. I'm from Sydney, Australia, and live in a posher and wealthier area. My friends wanted to call a taxi because we didn't want to wake our poor parents at this hour to drive us back home, but because of my stubbornness and insistence, we ended up taking the very long walk home. My friend Kieran was complaining most of the time. I guess I can't blame him. Bevis was just silent and compliant, and I was cheerful. When we reached almost my street, we split ways. The guys went on their very long walk home, which was way longer than mine, and I continued on mine. When I passed a little cake shop, I noticed a guy across the street. I only looked at him briefly, but something in the way he quickly looked up at me, almost with interest, caught my attention. I hurried on anyway because I'm usually paranoid about things, and 99% of the time, it's just me being paranoid. I turned onto my street, which was much darker than I had anticipated. This was about 3:15 a.m., mind you. As I passed the bowling club, I kept looking behind me just to make sure. It was getting quite cold and dark, so I started feeling creeped out, but there was no one behind me, no one anywhere as far as I could see. I was halfway down my street where the road dips down when I noticed something on the path in front of me. I couldn't tell what it was, and at the last minute, I stepped off the path onto the road to avoid it because it looked like it might be a dead animal. As I stepped onto the road, I turned slightly and saw that there was someone behind me. They weren't too close, but they weren't too far away either, and I remember my heart leaping into my throat because I hadn't seen them before, and for them to have gotten that close in that short space of time, something about it didn't sit well with me. When I told people about this later, they said that I should have been quite suspicious then. It was 3 a.m. in the morning, and you're quietly walking behind a girl, not even bothering to keep a safe distance. Like, if you're really innocent, you would take measures to emphasize that, right? I couldn't see who it was, nor could I tell if it was male or female because it was just a black figure to me. It was a very brief glimpse. I was scared, though, so I whipped out my phone and started to call Kieran. I kept calling him, but silly Vodafone couldn't connect to him. So I tried to call Bevis, but he wouldn't pick up. I kept this up at least 5 times, getting increasingly anxious but daring not to look behind me to see if he was still there. I'm glad I didn't actually. I think I would have really freaked out if I had confirmed it. By that time, I'd reached my driveway, and I hurried up it thinking I was safe. But as I was halfway up, I looked over my shoulder again, just really quickly, and I saw the figure there again. The way I explained this next bit is going to be hard because I was really confused and muddled. On one hand, it may have looked like he was merely passing my driveway, but on the other hand, I am much more certain that it looked like he was just about to step onto the driveway as if to walk up. At that precise moment that I thought that, it occurred to me that he might be my brother Hubert because no one else would bother walking up my driveway. Even if some guy was following me, it never occurred to me that he would really go to the lengths of going up my driveway as well. I thought I was completely safe because I had the advantage of having my house close by when he started following me. However, something about the build of this figure didn't seem like Hubert to me, so I hurried on anyway. My beautiful, wonderful, amazing mother had stayed up to wait for me, and I'm so glad because she opened the door for me as soon as I knocked. I hate to imagine what would have happened if I'd had to wait for a while. I went inside, but I left the second door open and the outside light on because I thought Hubert might be coming in any second now. But Mom was like, "You can turn them off. Your brother came back 2 hours ago." I did get a little bit creeped out, but I just dismissed the thought because we are so quick to always think we're safe. I closed the door, shut off the light, and went to get a drink of water, and Mom went to bed. I went to my room to grab my clothes and then went to the bathroom to take a shower. I switched off the living room lights. This is sort of funny now that I think about it. Before I took a shower, I replied back to a message from Kieran, who was asking if I was home safe yet. I demanded to know why he hadn't picked up his phone and then told him I was creeped out for a few minutes, but I was okay now. As I showered, I actually thought about that figure. I wasn't too convinced that it was following me, but my mind did teeter into wondering this or that. In any case, I remember thinking that it was okay because I was safe now. Near the end of my shower, I heard something at the window. It didn't sound like the usual creaking or bumping of an old house. The way I described it to other people was like the sound of someone resting their hands against the window to steady themselves. It sounded really unnatural. I know because it caught my attention straight away, and I immediately jumped to the possibility that there might be someone outside. I know that only a really strange sound would make me do what I did next, which was to turn off the water and crouch under the window, hiding and waiting. I waited for quite some time, too scared to move for a few minutes, but there was nothing. So I gingerly crawled out, still too scared to stand up properly, and I switched off the bathroom lights. But then it was impossible for me to dry myself and dress myself, so I turned on the heater light, which is much smaller and dimmer. As I did that, I noticed that there was a very small blue light there that certainly didn't belong there. The way I can describe it now, it was almost like a keypad of a phone lit up. I was scared, but I switched off the heater light as well and backed into the corner, my towel wrapped around me, and I waited. It seemed like a long time that I waited, too scared to unlock the door and move because I knew it would make a lot of noise. As I waited in the pitch darkness, several blue lights came on outside the window. A few became very bright, and they were moving, trying to shine through the window. Now that I think about it, it had to be a phone, but I'm not sure because there were a few lights. But that did it for me because I practically bolted for my mom. I unlocked the door and went into my parents' room, trembling like a leaf and gibbering that there was someone outside the bathroom window. I was clearly very upset, so Mom ushered me around, trying to find a safe room for me to change into. Dad apparently heard the footsteps hurrying back down the driveway, and I'm glad he did because the situation feels so surreal to me now that I'm not even sure if it really happened. Maybe I imagined it all, but this is confirmation that it wasn't just my imagination. I was so shaky, and I slid into bed and couldn't sleep until morning. Even when it was morning, I was terrified, especially when I heard Dad leave the house and go into the backyard. That was the lesson I learned. I'm never walking home again at night. I'm even a bit worried during the daytime now. We never did find out who it was. People wonder if it was the same person I passed earlier, but for some reason, I didn't think so. My brother doesn't think so either. Each year when I was a kid, we would celebrate New Year's Eve and stay up late. Normally, I would go to bed at about 10 o'clock, but on New Year's Eve, I would stay up until around 2 a.m. My sister, my parents, and I would play board games and watch movies. We would then watch the ball drop when it was midnight and would stay up for several more hours. I think this happened when I was about 12 years old. That time, like any other, we played games and watched a couple of movies. This continued well past midnight, and at roughly 2 a.m., we all got tired and finally decided to go to bed. We could sleep in the next day because nobody had work or school. Our house was on a pretty quiet street. Other than that, it was a pretty typical neighborhood. I stayed up a little bit later than everybody else that night because I was watching a movie in the living room. When it ended, I finally went to bed. I remember getting back into my bedroom and turning out the lights. When I did, I could see very clearly into the front yard because of the moonlight. There was a woman standing in our yard. She was not facing me, and I didn't recognize her. I walked over to the window, and when I did, the woman turned and faced me. She saw me and then started to walk closer in my direction. This really creeped me out. Nobody was supposed to be in our front yard. Nothing like this had ever happened before. I moved away from the window and hid. I ducked down and laid on the floor so that she couldn't see me. My window was pretty large, and I did not have a cover on it at the time. Now, my bedroom was also on the second floor, so she couldn't directly reach me, but I was still terrified. I waited there, just hoping that she would go away. A few minutes went by, then I heard something hit my window. I wasn't sure as to what it was. I started watching my window, and something else hit it. The woman was throwing sticks at it. She was trying to get my attention, and I don't know why, but I got up. I carefully looked out of the window again. The woman was still there and looking right up at me, this time closer. She said something, but I couldn't hear her. Then I saw her motioning for me to let her inside. I was not going to do that. She then walked to the side of the yard near the front door. Then she knocked on the front door. I didn't move. I was hoping that my parents or sister would wake up. I didn't have the thought to call the police for some reason. It just never entered my mind. The woman knocked on the door on and off for like 5 minutes. Finally, she walked away. I watched her from the window walk to the end of the driveway and then a little ways down. She then got inside of a vehicle and drove off. The whole situation was really bizarre, and it really confused me. The next morning, I told my parents about it. They had no idea what she could have been doing either. Luckily though, she never came back. This past New Year's Eve, I went away for the night with my two best friends and one of their moms. I was home for the holidays from college, and my friend Yarezi invited me to go to Palm Springs to celebrate New Year's with her mom and our friend Nadia. I didn't have any other plans, so I decided to go with them. We went to a cool city about an hour from where we live that is big on shopping and resorts. We planned to have a pretty calm night, watch the ball drop at a block party downtown, and have a few drinks at the bar. Since we're on the West Coast, the ball drop is at 9:30, so at around 8:30, we ventured from our hotel, walking to the block party about a mile away. On the way, we passed by a very lively bar. We decided to stop by and we spent 15 minutes dancing, but we didn't get any drinks. It was a gay bar, and Yarezi and Nadia, being gay, were stoked on it and wanted to come back after the ball drop, even though it was about 90% men there. We continued on to the block party to get some dinner and a glass of champagne. The ball finally dropped and they had a DJ, so we spent about an hour there just dancing. After we got tired of it, we decided to head back to the bar and hang out there until midnight. Once we got there, Yarezi's mom paid for a drink for each of us but left soon after that because she was tired. It's about 10:30 at this point, and Yarezi, Nadia, and I are enjoying our drinks and having fun dancing. Nadia tried some of my drink since it was one she hadn't had before. I constantly have my guard up when drinking in public, and I felt safe at this bar because it was 90% gay men who I thought would not have an interest in me. I went back to the bar to get a second drink, and that's the last thing I remember. The rest I've gathered from Yarezi and Nadia. Almost immediately after getting my second drink, I asked Nadia to go to the bathroom with me because I wasn't feeling well, even though I was completely fine 10 minutes before. Once in the bathroom, I just collapsed on the floor and was almost unresponsive. Nadia, now worried, somehow dragged my lifeless body out to where Yarezi was waiting for us. Security, seeing my condition and assuming I was wasted, asked us to leave. Yarezi and Nadia decided to take me back to the hotel about half a mile away. By this point, I was unconscious, and there were barely sounds escaping from my mouth. They saw someone leave the bar at the same time as us who was walking near us, but they were preoccupied with trying to keep my lifeless body off the ground. At one point, I threw up all over myself, them, and the sidewalk. The next part of the story we had to get from Yarezi because Nadia doesn't have much memory of this. Still struggling to carry me, the man they saw leave the bar approached them. He was hitting on Nadia, trying to get her to grab a drink with him. She was very agitated and told him to leave, saying her friend needed help right now. He didn't take no for an answer and continued to follow us down the street, asking if we wanted to get drinks with him and if he could help carry me and such. A middle-aged woman witnessing this came up and told the man off, saying something along the lines of, "Stop harassing these young women or I'm going to call the police." Thankfully, he left after that. Next, by some miracle, an EMT and his wife, enjoying the holiday, ran into us on the street. He checked me out to make sure something wasn't majorly wrong and then carried me the rest of the way to my motel and into the room since my friends could barely hold me up. They thanked him profusely, and him and his wife left. This is where Nadio's memory kicks back in a little bit. 5 minutes later, they get a knock on the door, and it's the EMT and his wife again. They came to let us know that a man followed us to the hotel, and they just saw him hop the gate and start to make his way to our room. My friends called hotel security, but they were unable to find him. My friends didn't get a glimpse of him, but I'm sure it was the same man from earlier. I spent the rest of the night vomiting everything in my body in dry heaving. After that, I woke up the next morning in a pile of pillows and blankets on the bathroom floor. My last memory was at the bar getting a second drink, and my friends filled me in on everything that happened. Feeling like crap, I thought I must have drunk way too much, but I've never blacked out before in my life, and the amount of drinks I had, only 2 in 2 hours, since I didn't get to my second at the bar, didn't add up to me being completely unconscious. We all decided that my first drink had to have been drugged since Nadia had some of it and had no memory of our walk even though she was fully functional. I'm sure that the man that was talking to Nadia and then followed us back was the one that slipped something in my drink. To this day, I don't really know how I could have been slipped something because I got my drink from the bar and never set it down. My best guess was that it was already in the cup. Thankfully, I had a good friend and kind strangers protecting me that night. It keeps me up at night thinking about what could have happened under different circumstances. Thanks for watching the video. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to watch the latest videos.